adult female and a child. Well, 28.
Hey, what's going on, folks? We have a bonus episode for you today. I'm joined by border expert and boots on the ground reporter Jorge Ventura, who spends his time down there talking to migrants, talking to border agents, and getting to the bottom of why the heck Republicans can't seem to do anything about it and how crazy it really is down there at the border. Check out some of these clips.
So Deputy Bowles, these two migrants were nearly swept away from the river and the strong current here. But this is what you're basically just seeing on a normal basis at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah, this is every day. Where they crossed right here, this is a dangerous area. Once they get to the middle of the bridge, they pick a really rough spot to cross. It's very deep in the middle, and the current is very strong. And I don't know how far you were filming, but it swept them from maybe about 75 yards within about 30 seconds. So the water of the current's very strong.
And as these two make it here to American soil, we could see behind them more are coming, and migrants just continue to risk their lives here in the Del Rio sector, which is the deadliest sector here in the southern border.
36, geez, 36.
It's going to be a great episode, folks. The live show starts now. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
Venezuela, 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 Venezuela.
Hey, what's going on, folks? Thanks for making a second episode of the day for Dream Rare Podcast. I'm here with border expert and boots on the ground journalist Jorge Ventura. Thanks for joining me, Jorge.
Hey man, it's good to be back with you, bro.
Yeah, so what's the reality of going on there? Before I ask any questions, like, what do people need to know about the truth about what's really going on at the border?
I think what people kind of really need to know is, because people always ask me the difference between Trump and Biden, and the big thing under Trump is he had the Remain in Mexico policy. And the reason why this was huge, it was because it serves as a deterrence. That's a big thing when we talk about the border, is deterrence. So for a migrant, the thinking would be is, well, why would I pay a human smuggler? Why would I pay a cartel to be basically go all the way to the border, risk my life, only for Trump to then push me back into Mexico and tell me, well, you have to remain in Mexico until your court case inside the United States. For migrants, that was not worth the risk at all. Under Biden, they have basically scrapped the Remain in Mexico policy and have basically instilled what we kind of nicknamed the catch and release policy. So where migrants know now, as long as they get on U.S. soil, meaning that they could break the law to do that, right? Cross illegally, but as long as they get inside U.S. soil, they will be processed by Border Patrol, and then most of them will be released inside the United States. So that's kind of the basis of this kind of whole crisis, if you will.
Guys, I turned up his volume. I saw the comments, so I turned it up as loud as I can. It should be better now, so you should be good, Jorge. So I saw on certain things that the National Guard of Texas was trying to stop people, and then there were some clips, I think, where then the federally, like, they allowed them in or something. Is there sort of a difference of idea of what to do between the, federal and state level?
Yeah, so the big thing right now, guys, is there's a huge kind of battle between state and federal. So the state is Governor Greg Abbott, it's Texas, it's the National Guard, it's a local law enforcement, it's Texas State Troopers. Then you got obviously federal with Border Patrol. The thing is Border Patrol in that famous clip, if you guys saw, where the migrants are kind of locked out of this gate. The thing is, right when those migrants are, they're technically already on American soil. So because they are on American soil, Border Patrol has to process them because they cannot let them further inside the United States. The huge issue is that Governor Greg Abbott is doing the best that he can with Texas State Rangers, local law enforcement, and National Guard to basically stop these migrants from coming on. But the thing is they can't really deter migrants from even coming on U.S. soil. So essentially, they're like basically babysitters on the border for these migrants. So when the migrants cross over, they basically act as babysitters for the Border Patrol, if you will. So there's almost no real deterrence on the border because there's no law that right now the migrants are really really fearful of. Even if they're some are going to be deported under this thing called Title 42. So Title 42 means you get immediately deported back to Mexico. So if a migrant is deported under Title 42, the only flaw with Title 42 is there's no criminal record, meaning that if I got deported under Title 42 and then I crossed illegally back inside the United States, there's no record of me already breaking the law once. So right now the state and the federal has become increasingly interesting, but what's also more interesting is that Governor Greg Abbott has kind of put the migrant debate on the national spotlight by forcing not by forcing, but literally getting migrants to volunteer, busing them to New York and DC, and then forcing the media in New York and DC to talk about the issue.
Right. I know a lot of people thought that was funny. Some people thought it was a bad idea to spread them across the country, but I definitely thought it was an interesting chess move where, they act like it's not a big deal and it doesn't really affect your economy or anything, or it's just whatever, get over it, you're racist. And then you see Eric Adams from New York City saying, I don't know that our infrastructure can hold this. And now all of a sudden they really seem to care about migrants when how many even get bused there? Probably not even 1 or 5%, right, of what Texas is dealing with in Arizona.
Oh, not even close. Well, the funny thing is cities like New York and DC literally have the infrastructure to deal with large amounts of people, to literally deal with these migrants. And within a month of migrants being bused, they're already complaining, saying resources are running out. I don't know if you guys saw the news, but DC mayor for the second time in 2 weeks got rejected by the Pentagon. So she was trying to request National Guard to deal with the migrants, and the Pentagon said we're not doing that right now. So think about that. But these little towns in Texas, we're talking about populations of 15,000 in Del Rio. They're dealing with 3,000 people coming in every single day. You think they have the resources and the infrastructure? And just to put it in context, the whole town of Del Rio has 5 ambulances. Last year in September, if you guys remember, it made national news when 15,000 Haitians just crashed the bridge. So those 5 ambulances the whole time were literally being used to transport migrants and not being used for American taxpayers. Right here in Anomaly, we actually just interviewed Myrick County deputy constables who are telling us that they can't even field domestic violence calls because their manpower is basically helping Border Patrol be the babysitters of migrants. This whole thing is a complete mess.
Right. If Republicans get back into office, what do they have the legality to do? If they can they do it through the House or the Senate, or does it have to be presidency? And in your understanding, what can they do?
All they have to do is, at least if they have the majority of the Senate, and they're gonna need help from the presidency. They're gonna need a Republican in office. So I honestly think just by reinstating and actually doing it by law, the Remain in Mexico would just already be a huge help, because that already serves as a deterrent. So then migrants would be like, wait a minute, this whole thing is not even worth it anymore, because no migrant actually wants to wait in a border town that's controlled by cartels in Mexico. And many times those border towns are actually more dangerous than like the country that they're actually running away from. But this thing is insane. I mean, even today, yesterday, normally when we interviewed the local law enforcement, they actually, when we arrived on the scene, an hour before we got to the scene, they actually pulled out a dead body out of the Rio Grande River. On Monday, they actually pulled out a 3-year-old who actually drowned crossing with her mother. So in the sector that I'm reporting right now that's called Del Rio, it is the deadliest sector due to all the drownings. And I mean, the thing is, the mainstream politicians on both sides just don't want to talk about this stuff.
Right. Obviously, I think before Trump got into office, they used to seem to work on it. I've seen videos of Chuck Schumer who said we have to build a wall, and now they're crying and saying it's racist. The media really got that to stick, and people don't really think about this stuff. I think you do a great job of explaining it, but you either hear maybe like, no offense to Fox News, but they're like yelling about it in a way that doesn't really reach a lot of the masses and like the culture. And then on the left, they just don't care about it at all. So, how do we get people to understand how crazy this is? And I think, the hospital story is definitely one that gets through.
I think it's going to take a battle. I think it takes kind of what we're doing right now, what I'm doing, reporting on it, guys like Bill Malugin, Julio Rosas out there, and just showing also what the local communities are going through. What I also think is interesting is, if you guys just look at South Texas in particular, look at how they voted in 2016. All those counties are overwhelmingly Democratic, and they're overwhelmingly Hispanic, and they all swung to Hillary Clinton by like over 30 points. It wasn't even close. If you fast forward to 2020, most of those counties actually swung to the GOP. You have a town like McAllen, who just voted in their first Republican mayor for the first time in history. Myra Flores obviously flipped a Democratic seat for the first time. So you're actually seeing the Hispanics in South Texas say, well, hey, if you guys are not going to pay attention to us, whether it's the corporate media or the Democrats, then we're just going to do this grassroots. So they're actually organizing, getting Republicans in office. They got also Cassie Garcia, who's a Latina who's running in South Texas. Monica de la Cruz is also another Latina running here in South Texas. So if the Democrats and politicians don't want to pay attention, it seems like the community of South Texas is going to say, well, F you, we'll just do it ourselves.
Right. I think it was a genius move from Abbott, because I do get the counter side is now you're sending all these illegal migrants all over the country. But what Jorge's talking about, I'm sure he'll tell you more of, is they have their hands tied. There's this rule that, they could just keep coming and get maybe legal representation. And it's so easy and painless. And, one way or another, they could seek asylum. And, once they're here, then it's, the Border Patrol agents, I see the videos, they just got to kind of let them go. They're not allowed to kick them out. So when you have your hands tied, it's like either you let them in and they keep overflowing, your state and your cities, or you send them to, Eric Adams, 1% or less than 1% of these people, and see how they handle it. And I think it really has hit the media pretty hard, because I've never seen New York City complain about illegal immigration until they got a couple hundred or a couple thousand people. Now, all of a sudden, if you watch the videos of Eric Adams, he's crying as if, this is going to devastate his entire, city. I'll try to find a video while you're talking of it.
No, yeah, you're actually making a great point. So the question that I always get is like, Jorge, why can Abbott, instead of busing him to New York, just bust him to Mexico? Well, legally, he cannot even do that. It has to be from the federal government and Biden. So by Abbott busting, I get the counterpoint of not busting these migrants further in the country, but with Abbott actually busting these migrants, you actually force the media in New York and D.C. to have to cover the issue, and now it's being brought up every single day. I just saw for the very first time ever MSNBC New York literally used the word crisis in the headline when they talk about the migrants, because they're talking about New York. So in a way, you're forcing that conversation from the Democrats, and then now you're forcing the Democrats to actually go into the White House and the Pentagon saying we need assistance. So you actually might have to force Biden to the table. So this is getting interesting really, really fast. I don't know what the hell is going to happen this next month or two, but Mayor Adams and D.C. Bowser are in a lot of trouble because they cannot handle the amount of migrants coming through.
Right. I found the clip of Eric Adams and I loaded it up. So let's look at Eric Adams complaining about the very small percentage of migrants that have been bused to his city.
This is a real burden on New Yorkers as we're trying to do the right thing. We already, as I stated, we already have an overburdened shelter system. So now we're talking about, as you stated, food, clothing, school. This is going to impact our schools, because we do not turn away individuals because they're undocumented. Translation services. There's just a whole host of things that this is going to produce, and that's why we need help in getting this done, and we need the right coordination to make it happen.
So just to let people know, if you know the number, how many migrants did they send to New York City, and what are the numbers of people coming across every month to places like Arizona and Texas?
I believe they're barely over 2,000, 2 or 3,000 right now, New York. So they're seeing a small wave of what a little border town sees every day. And the good thing for New York is they don't have to deal with the fentanyl that comes in through the port of entry. They don't have to deal with the drowned bodies that are in the river. And they don't have to chase human smugglers and get into the car chases. For folks who don't know this, in Uvalde, one of the reasons, and this is not a big excuse, but one of the reasons the police in Uvalde reacted so slow to that car crash and then the shooter jumping into school is because they thought it was another migrant just running away. So they thought it was another bailout. Uvalde has the most bailouts, meaning they have migrants that literally are in car chases with Border Patrol and local law enforcement. They have already about 40 this year. So when the call came in about this guy crashing his truck next to a school, they thought it was another bailout. So it really impacts these small towns, and I don't think people realize it. We were talking to the local law enforcement here who were telling us that the local funeral homes are being overwhelmed because they basically are the ones who have to basically recover these dead bodies coming out of the river. But another issue really to the border thing, just really quick, is the amount of fentanyl coming into the country is insane. In July, Border Patrol, the amount of fentanyl they seized was actually a 200% increase. And for a lot of Americans who think that fentanyl is not an issue that they have to worry about, fentanyl right now is impacting Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan the most. You know, those middle ground states, especially those states where all those great manufacturing jobs used to be. So this is becoming an issue that's impacting all 50 states at this point.
Right. Do you see the hypocrisy in the, say, I know when everybody had to lock down and we can't even go to the gym, but they are not closing off illegal immigration, or when we're getting tested, forced masked and forced vaccinated. But they had, I saw Jen Psaki on television say different laws for the migrants, being like, oh, that's not a policy that we do at the time. So we do it for citizens and not illegal. And then, of course, like you said, or like you mentioned, the health of fentanyl, which for people who don't know, I think it's the number one killer of Americans. It's primarily killing younger people. And the life expectancy, everybody always talks about, we want to give a better life to our kids than we had, right? And that's the trajectory of America. That's what it means to be a great nation, to give your kids a better life than you had. And for the first time in a long time, our life expectancy is actually going backwards. And one of the main reasons our life expectancy on average in America is going backwards is because of drug overdoses. And one of the biggest drug overdoses is fentanyl, among the legal big pharma drugs that people overdose on. So it's like, why do you think our CDC and FDA and all these other agencies that claim to care so much about health and bipartisan politicians, how come they're so shockingly nonchalant about fentanyl killing millions of kids?
I just think for them at this point, man, they just think that like the American population is just at this point just dumb, and they can almost get away with any little thing that they do. It was funny, anomaly, because last year, while we were under vaccine mandates and business closures, I was interviewing Haitian migrants that were being released inside the United States. And what I loved about the Haitians is that they were just brutally honest. And I said, hey, have you guys been tested for COVID-19 before being put on our buses and planes with other Americans? And they would just be like, no, we haven't. And I'm like, there you have it. I mean, they treat us so different. For the migrants, it's completely different rules. It's a different ball game. Like I said, they're even in New York. Once they arrive to New York, they're being provided with all these services. And I mean, we don't even do our veterans like that in this country anymore. But no, it's a huge slap in the face. And like I said, look, even if you're a Democrat, like if you're a politician on the left, or your strategy for the Democratic Party, it doesn't even make sense to not address this issue, because now Latino voters are literally rejecting you for it in South Texas and nationally. Right now, the Biden administration is 19 with Hispanics, so record low with Hispanics. So it doesn't even make sense. Not to even pay attention to the border. Kamala Harris has been nicknamed the border czar. She has not been down there. The only time she visited the border was like last year, and she's literally just hung out at the airport. Literally didn't even get out of the airport hangar. So it's a complete mess. It's a complete mess.
Where are people coming from? You said Haiti. I saw Venezuela. Like, where can you name all the places you've seen people and talk to them at the border and where they're from?
Yeah, so let me break it down for some folks. So when I'm in South Texas, I'm mostly running into Nicaraguans, Central Americans. You'll run into some Cubans and some Venezuelans. So that's the typical what you're seeing in South Texas. Now, when we are in Yuma, Arizona, it is, to me, it's the most fascinating border sectors, Yuma, Arizona, because you get hit by migrants from all over the world, from 100 different countries. So when I'm in Yuma, I'll try to remember all the migrants I've met from the countries. But when I was in Yuma, I met migrants from Afghanistan, Cuba, Venezuela, El Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Belarus, Jordan, Georgia, Russia, Uzbekistan, and I know I'm forgetting one or two. And then when we actually got to this sector on Monday, anomaly, I spoke to local law enforcement. He actually sent me the picture, and I posted it on social media. They got 3 Chinese nationals on Sunday. So you even got Chinese crossing illegally through Mexico inside the United States. So for people who just think this is our Salvadorans or Guatemalans, could be further from the truth. They come in from all over the world. And like I said, you go to Yuma. I highly encourage you guys, if you guys can look at my coverage, look at the videos that I get from Yuma. There are migrants from all over the world. The amount of men coming from India, that to me was shocking. The amount of men, single men coming without families. Even today we saw a bunch of single men from Venezuela coming without families. I think that should be troublesome for our country heading these next couple of years.
Wow, that's crazy, but it's not surprising when it's so easy to get in and, doing it the right way. I guess it would be like if theft was easy, it's like people don't steal. I mean, they're starting to steal and do smash and grabs and get caught at a high risk. And I mean, there is a little risk in crossing the border, but the easier you make immorality in some ways, the more people are going to want to do it. So why wait 15 years and come across the border and have to pay $30,000 to get a green card when you could just, come across the border and maybe get in for free and get some free stuff? So I think that's definitely part of it. How do you think we wake people up besides just doing this? Because I know you're totally right. I've been saying recently, it might sound rude, but if you act like a cattle or a sheep, the people treat you like cattle and sheep on both sides. And right now, this isn't an issue because a lot of people don't seem to care about it. Hispanics are waking up politically, but the average debater who's debating over left and right, and especially in the Democratic Party, they just don't care. So do you think they will care when it gets so bad that they can't ignore it, or?
That's a good question. I don't, I might not have the right answer to it. I think one of the things that I've been trying to tell, like just my close friends or whatever, or people that I come in contact with, I say, I think it's appropriate to call it a humanitarian crisis. And the reason why I say humanitarian is because when here in America, we think humanitarian, we say, oh, well, humanitarian crisis, yeah, that's in Yemen, or that's in Africa, or that's in, in a whole other side of the world. That doesn't happen here. There's literally a humanitarian crisis right here. The same way that Yemen has one, we have one in our border. And I think when you have that type of conversation, and take the politics out of it too, I think, this, because it's a humanitarian crisis, it doesn't even have to be a left or right issue. It's just a human issue. I think as Americans, we got to agree is maybe we have different takes or different opinions on border policy, but I think we could all agree that we don't want migrants sex traffic and human traffic the way they are. We don't want these unaccompanied children arriving with no parents. And I mean, just with all the trauma, the amount of drugs coming in. So I think we could at least agree on that. So I think calling it a humanitarian crisis instead of a border crisis actually might spark a lot more Americans to actually come together and actually start talking about it and how to get to solutions, actually.
I'm going to role play a debate just for my own personal, I wouldn't say humor, but I want to see how you respond. I'm going to pretend like I'm a Democrat or like a progressive. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I'll say, well, Jorge, I've heard that it's, and by the way, guys, I have his name over here now. It's Jorge Ventura. I know you guys are going to want to check him out. And if you ever donate to a politician or anything, I'm not telling you that we need money, but Jorge does really great work. So it's way better to give him some cash because he's down there at the border all the time. He's broken stories without a mainstream media source, just by himself. And he's crushing everybody in the mainstream media by being down there. So please check him out, follow him, and support him because it'll go way further than like giving Trump money or something. But in general, yeah, no problem. As a Democrat, I'd say, well, Jorge, I think it's racist. You just don't want Hispanics here. And who cares? Because, this isn't our country. It was founded on slavery and imperialism. And why should I care about the border when it's just like, who cares who's here? It's just, it doesn't matter.
Well, I would say, Anomaly, actually, I agree with you. I think we could both agree that we want a more safer and a humanitarian route for the migrants to come. So obviously you and I care about brown people. I don't want brown people sex trafficking and human traffic on the border, and I don't think you want that either. And the thing, Anomaly, is under the Biden administration, because migrants do feel like, hey, we could just come in easily, they're putting themselves in the hands of cartels and human smugglers. Now, I'm not saying that the Republican Party is doing an awesome job either. I think we could work on a better legal way and a safer route with the migrants. But the policy right now of just open door, it actually puts the migrants in a lot more danger. And we're seeing that actually by the numbers, Anomaly. In 2022, there's actually already been over 600 migrant deaths. If you actually compare that just to the past 2 years combined, we don't even get to 300 deaths. So this year alone has already broken the record in deaths, unfortunately, and the amount of unaccompanied children reaching the border. We're already at about 250,000. So that's kids with no parents. We got to find a better way, and I think we could agree on that.
A progressive would say, well, Jorge, the reason they're dying is because you're making it so hard for them to come in, or Republicans make it so hard for them to come in. That's usually their talking point.
You know what? That's not even a bad talking point. I think what we could do is, I agree with you, and I would actually say we could both actually put pressure on the Republican Party to find a better legal route. Now, we could maybe discuss that how it is. I think the Remain in Mexico policy, that it does do a good job of deterring the illegal immigration. It also does put migrants right in danger when they have to remain in a border town, and it is taking them pretty long to get these, for their court cases to get heard. So I think if we actually come together and pressure both of our political parties, we could force them to find a better legal way and a safer way for migrants, expedite that court process, and hey, if they come in legally, then they can pay taxes. We want them part of the country anyway.
Right. I just wanted to play devil's advocate because I know that's what they always say. And I'm like, it's also the argument of, I think a good one is, you don't lock your door because you hate everyone outside. You lock it because you love the people inside. And you're starting to see similar things to border in Los Angeles, and it's even leaking into other counties where people are getting away with stuff so much. And similar to how you said the Uvalde cops are so used to dealing with migrant stuff that it's like they can't even do that much. It's the same thing in Los Angeles, where there's some laws and rules that they literally can't. Even in Orange County, there's been homeless, and I'm like, why are they there? Oh, we actually can't do anything. You know, like their hands are tied. And that happens in the police force in LA too.
Yeah, actually, a quick little story, guys. I went up to San Francisco, and I was in community college at this time, and I did a story of buying fentanyl undercover. And I would go on the streets and I would buy fentanyl off these Honduran teens who are obviously undocumented. They didn't speak a lick of English. And when I would actually go to San Francisco police would say, hey, I just bought fentanyl off this like 16-year-old Honduran kid who's undocumented. Like, you guys can't arrest him or anything? And he's like, dude, this is a sanctuary city. Like, that kid actually has more protections than I do. And he said, if I take that kid to jail, by the time I'm done filling out the paperwork, he's already out the jail. So we literally don't even arrest people who sell fentanyl on our streets anymore, and he's undocumented. So I mean, there you go. What a double whammy.
I want to ask two more questions. The first one is, let's just say I don't see this happening soon, but maybe it will happen in 2024. Who knows? Let's say the Republicans win the House, the Senate, the presidency, like they had in 2016, except no more Paul Ryan and no more excuses. What could Republicans do with a full scale of power to actually stop the border crisis nearly completely? Like, what, in your knowledge, what can they do?
Well, I mean, I think as soon as they reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, and just literally, like, I actually have had these conversations with Border Patrol. I said, what would you guys need, like, right now, as in day, like, what would just turn it around immediately, right, if you had it your way? They literally like, dude, we really don't even need much. It's like, Jorge, we just needed to enforce the laws that are already on the books. You come into the country illegally, you're deported. So I think if Republicans just came in, just by reinstating that Remain in Mexico policy and just literally reinstating that, you know, normal border law, that would actually stop it, because migrants, that would put the fear in the migrants again, and saying, okay, we're not going to put ourselves in cartel hands, because the risk is it's just not worth it, because then we have to wait in a border town. So I just think if they just came in and literally just enacted the rules that are already on the books, you're already good to go. That's what literally Border Patrol tells me. They said, Jorge, the law's are already there. It's just under this administration, it's been catch, process, and then, you know, released inside the United States.
And did Trump give them more leeway? Did they like it under Trump better?
They liked it under Trump, especially the Remain in Mexico policy was a huge thing. They also liked that Trump was a big, basically, supporter of Border Patrol. That actually kept morale high. They felt they had the support from the president. Under Biden, the morale is very, very low. What started to get the morale low was obviously the spike in the border crossings, but what really did it anomaly is, if you guys remember, back in September when those 15,000 Haitians crossed the Del Rio Bridge, there was actually a fake news story of these Border Patrol agents on these horses whipping migrants like it's freaking the 1900s.
Right.
We all knew it was fake. The evidence never came out, but the Biden administration still attacked those agents, and they went to, like, actually suspend those agents. So when I spoke to Border Patrol agents, they said, hey, that right there, Jorge, just did it. Like, that, like, broke the relationship, and it cannot be repaired after that. That's why I do believe, that's why we're seeing Border Patrol leak a bunch of information. Mayorkas, the DHA secretary, when he visited the border, you had Border Patrol agents, like, literally talking smack to him in his face. Good. And the audio was leaked, because they don't even respect these guys. So the morale, I would say, anomaly is probably the biggest thing of just how low it is. One Border Patrol agent, the conversation that always stands out is one Border Patrol agent literally told me, said, Jorge, I'm not even doing my job anymore. I'm literally an Uber driver. I just pick up migrants and take them to a processing center. He says, I don't do border enforcement, I do border enrollment. And I was like, that's literally like that's the general feeling of these agents.
That's crazy. What could a U.S. politician say if Trump got back in, or DeSantis, or any Republican, and they had that power again? What could they do to help Mexico do a better job? Because obviously, you know, none of this would be possible if Mexico wasn't so weak with allowing these people to do this, or at least not doing enough maybe to deter it.
I'm not, well, look, as you guys know, I'm not obviously a foreign policy expert, but I'm just looking at what Trump did, and what did work is Trump threatened Mexico and said, okay, any vehicle that you guys sell in the U.S., there's going to be a tariff unless you put troops on your border. So Mexico, for the very first time in almost their own history, actually had troops on the Guatemalan-Mexico border, and they stopped illegal immigration. The crazy thing is, anomaly, when Trump forced Mexico to do this, it actually boosted up the relationship between El Salvador and United States, because Nayib Bukele has a similar view as President Trump, because Bukele says, I need more Salvadorians in El Salvador if we're going to rebound this economy. And any human smuggler, trying to smuggle Salvadorians, we're going to hit you with a felony charge. So Bukele actually loved Trump's policy of having Mexico put those troops on the Guatemalan border. Since then, I mean, Almo, to be honest, talked smack to President Biden. In the last meeting that they had in the White House, Almo literally talked shit to Biden for 25 minutes in his face about inflation. He's the alpha now in the relationship. He's no longer scared of Biden. But I think the tariff decision by Trump, it worked greatly, and it improved the relationship with Central America as well.
Isn't it crazy how the media can just brainwash so many people, where you have presidents who agree with Trump, obviously other Hispanic countries that know that it's bad, there's human trafficking, fentanyl, there's so many angles to this that are so nefarious, killing millions of people, sending life expectancy backwards. They're coming across the border without getting tested or vaccinated, but you can't do the same thing in your own country. There's so many angles to this that are so obvious, but we know that people don't understand this because when you watch NBC, ABC, CBS, whatever it is, Trevor Noah, all these different, they're painting this whole different story, and they're just not even talking about it. They're not having a border guard on to say what he's really experiencing. They paint this, and as you know, a lot of the border guards are Hispanic themselves, and there are, all-time low Hispanic voting in America for Biden. Why is that? Do they care to bring a Hispanic on who's not a Democrat? No, they just paint it as if it's not even there, right? And create this false reality that people believe.
And you know what I mean? That is just honestly it's the elite liberals, the highly educated, living on the coast. The only brown and Hispanic person they know, just to keep it real with y'all, is the person that probably is their maid at their house or cuts their grass. That's the only person that they know, and they're so disconnected from the real world and real working class Hispanics. That's why I think they're being rejected on the issue of the border. And this is a whole other topic, but I think them going down the whole LGBT kind of route, transgender, anyone could be gay, that turns off Hispanics more than ever. So Hispanics right now are in this kind of fascinating place in politics where they say, wait a minute, you don't care about the immigration issue, then you don't care about any working class issues. You want to call me Latinx, but I'm feeling the pain at the pump. My groceries cost more. My kids are falling into depression. It's they kind of spit in our face, and I think the Hispanics are starting to wake up little by little. And I think that Mayra Flores win is monumental, and I think it's going to change a lot of how Hispanics view politics right now.
And speaking of the working class, and even say maids or landscapers, it's watching elite liberals also just bully them. A lot of, I'm not saying every maid or landscaper can't speak English, but you understand a lot of people that are working on certain professions, they're not the most fluent in English. That's just obvious. They're the ones getting bullied. You have to take a vaccine or you can't work here. You know what I'm saying? You have to wear a mask. Meanwhile, the elite liberals running around. I've done landscaping. It's no joke. It's way harder with a mask on, whether the fact checkers want to say or not, in the heat. So they're making their landscapers, their maids, their other things work under these policies that they're not even following themselves. And it's really supremacist to be well, my air and my breath and is okay, but yours, when you're working for me, is needs to be covered up because I can't risk it. But I can risk with you, but you can't risk with me.
I don't know if you guys know this, but Brian Stelter earlier this year, I was so happy when his thing got canceled. Brian Stelter earlier this year, he fired his Hispanic maid because she didn't want to get the vaccine. It's damn, bro, on TV, on camera, you love to be the guy that loves black and brown people, and you're the awesome white liberal. Yeah, you could just kick your maid to the curb. That to me is the funniest part. But I do think that population is waking up anomaly. I think we're seeing it by the stats. Like I said, record low approval with Hispanics. They're at 19%. I think what we're seeing in South Texas, things are just getting more and more interesting. And the immigration issue is a huge one. I get feedback all the time from Democratic voters, people that voted for Biden who are Hispanic, who said, Jorge, I had no idea the border was this bad, and I can't believe I voted for a guy who doesn't even care about it. Because at the end of the day, who do you think is getting sex trafficked and human trafficked at the border? It's black and brown people. But you don't see any white liberals down there. You don't see AOC crying and trying to give us water or anything down there. It's a complete mess. It's a complete mess.
On average, obviously this isn't true to everybody, but to kind of paint an average in the Hispanic community, I would say they're more pro-family than the average American, super pro-family, having kids, and, definitely a lot of religions, a lot of Christians, and then also just, on average, very hardworking and don't, homeless-wise, I'm guessing they're a very small percentage of the homeless population that's not, in a line with how many people are in the cities and stuff, they're grinding. So if you believe in families, you're not into the rainbow mafia stuff, you're a little Christian, and then you also work and pay bills and can tell the difference between your steak or supplies for your business going up 200%, I think that just like hits so hard. And there's a lot of other people in other communities that are able to just ignore all this stuff because either they have the resources to do so or they're just so brainwashed that they don't even care.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing is when you hear like, people like, the border wall is racist or things like that. It's like, well, if you go down to South Texas, everyone down there supports the border wall, and everyone down there is Mexican. I mean, everyone is Latino. Everyone is Latino in all these places. There's not too many white people living in Del Rio, Texas. I don't know if that's a shocker to a lot of people, but that's just the truth. And when you talk to these folks, they say, hey, look, we're not against these migrants. We understand it, the whole journey, but there's got to be a different way. We can't do it like this. And one thing I've been actually having this conversation normally when we come to the Hispanics, and I'm trying to get my white friends to understand is I'm saying, the Hispanic, population, they're conservative, they're pro-base, they're pro-family, and by conservative I mean just like old school tradition, not like conservative like Republican style. And the thing is, you have a population that doesn't even agree. The majority doesn't even agree with gay marriage yet, right? So let me explain this. So for instance, white conservatives in this country have already gave up on the gay marriage debate. They let that one go. Gays can get married. Hispanics, the majority of Hispanics don't even agree with that part yet. So if you have a population that doesn't even agree on same-sex marriage, then you're getting pushed to transgender stuff. That's like, whoa, buddy. That's a million miles per, we're not even on this boat yet. And now you're telling us that our chicks have dicks. Whoa, hold on. So I think that has been the biggest gift almost to the GOP, because Hispanics are saying, okay, this is too much. I'm not, the rainbow mafia, yeah, that's a little bit too much.
Right. And what's interesting is the GOP does this weird thing where they're always caving to the left, but somehow at the same time they're not likable. Where it's like if you cave to the left, at least be likable. Where I've had more Democrats reach out to me and said they like Matt Walsh's documentary than likes the fact that Governor Abbott, is like on the fence about certain topics. So in a weird way, authenticity really does prevail. Certain things might be unpopular, but I do think that among the Hispanic community, the transgender children / LGBT stuff, it doesn't make sense to them. But also even other demographics and other Democrats, like anybody over the age of 30 or 40 can identify like, wait, even if I do agree with gay marriage or I don't care, I do also see how a 7-year-old shouldn't have their genitals cut off because it's too young. Like I think that is a winning issue. And weirdly enough, I think Matt Walsh has become, although he's become very hated, he's picked up more Democrats on his content than people realize. Just like Tucker. Tucker seems so hateful, but they did the study recently that found out he had more Democrats watching his show 20 to 30 than even Democrat channels. So, it's interesting what authenticity and braveness can do for you.
Yeah, and then I mean, if you guys saw it earlier, it was like I think last month, New York Times, like the rise of the far right Latina. It's like them doing that is alienating the working class even more, and almost putting the bullseye in the back. So look, we'll see. At the end of the day, the GOP, we know this now. The GOP sucks, right? It's not like they're like this. It's not like they have all the solutions. I mean, the Democratic Party is just so bad that a lot of people are like, I don't know where to go. You guys are at least your guys' chicks don't have dicks yet. I'm going to that party because their chicks have dicks, so I'm leaving there. So it's not like the Republicans have all the solutions either. So I think the midterms are going to be fascinating. The Republicans better capitalize, better not be sleeping, especially when it comes to that messaging.
Right, I think they have. I think that they don't have momentum because their message has been stale. But we'll see in all the individual races. Before we wrap it up, I want to give you just the floor to say whatever you want. Any last words? And I don't want to say it for him, guys. Check him out. At least give him a follow on Instagram, Jorge Ventura TV. It's spelled, okay, I got to point the right way. It's spelled over there, Jorge Ventura. And I'm not joking, guys. You know me. I almost seem like a hater sometimes because I have such high standards. But Jorge Ventura is one of the best independent journalists. He's out here doing, like, I see myself in him where I feel like I'm doing the work of 50 people. He's out here doing the work of 100 people and really getting the story, not just like looking on the TV, but creating the story by going out there and talking to migrants on both sides of the border. It's been amazing. So yeah, any last words? And thank you for joining, Jorge.
No, I appreciate my man Anomaly for having me on. He's my favorite political rapper. We still got to get this one-on-one basketball game. I'm gonna have to cross him up. You know,
Bro.
that's a whole nother.
Let's
that's
go.
a whole nother talk. But no, hey, I appreciate everyone. I appreciate everyone hopping on the live. For those who are interested in checking out the work, if you guys go on Instagram and type in Jorge Ventura TV, you guys can see a lot of my work. We post full stories on there, so you'll be really informed on what's going on. If you guys want to see like the breaking news live, that's on Twitter. So that'll be Jorge Ventura Media on Twitter. Check those guys out. We have a lot of stuff, guys. We're not just even covering border. We're doing crime stories. We just got done doing a documentary on cartels in Northern California called narcofornia.com. You can find on my Instagram. But no, Anomaly, thanks for having me on, man. These are always great.
Yeah, I just have to correct you real quick. Of course he can't beat me one-on-one in basketball. Maybe he's just a little drunk or something. No, I'm just kidding. But we will we will play, and we'll have to go to 21 and film it. So it's going to happen. But I know you're busy and I'm busy. But while you're busy, make sure you're still doing push-ups and playing, because I'm going to get some new basketball shoes for sure. All right. See you, Jorge. Thanks for joining, everybody.